This topic, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it's not for you old folks. It's not for you millennials. It's not for you baby boomers. It's not for you Gen Xers. This topic is really for the younger generation, particularly, teenagers, young 20s, and it's very, very important. It is. It is. Stop teaching slavery, Jim Crow, excuse me, guys, Harriet Tubman, and embrace futurism or Afrofuturism. And I'm going to tell you why. There was a scientific experiment done many years ago and involved flies, right? The scientists put the flies in a jar and they capped the jar off with a lid. The flies eventually died, but they had offspring. And then the offspring were still in the jar. And then those offspring had children too, or offsprings, or they had their own offspring. Then eventually, the scientist opened up the jar. And do you know what the third or fourth generation of flies did? They flew no higher than the lid when the lid was on. So the lid was off and the flies did not fly out of the jar. Guys, use that scientific experiment and follow the discussion today. Hear me out. You ever noticed, and hear me out for a minute, you ever noticed that they bombard you with slave movies? You ever notice that especially white liberals love talking about the woe is me black person? I'm going to tell you guys, do you know how easy it is to enslave people mentally? Guys, if you're young, if you're about 14, 15, 16, 17, you really should be in school by now. But this is for you. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. Harriet Tubman didn't exist. Slavery, the only thing that you people know about slavery is what you see on TV. There are a lot of older black Americans. Ask them about Jim Crow. I bet you they will tell you that it was better during Jim Crow than it is now. They will tell you that it was better during segregation than it is now. Guys, the only thing that you know about history is through the game of telephone, what you heard from somebody or what they heard from somebody. You weren't a slave. You can't convince me to believe that a 5'2" black woman was out here saving people, going to different plantations with an Elmer Fudd musket. It ain't happening. But they're telling you these things, not just the liberal media, not just white liberals, but blacks who love the notion of being victims, love the notion of being lazy and blaming things on slavery. They're telling you these things because misery loves company. Misery loves company, guys. And the reason why you need to embrace Afrofuturism is because of this. Look at all of these successful ethnic groups. Look at the successful countries. Look at Japan. Look at China. Look at Germany. When they started to develop industry, when they started to develop infrastructure, when they looked towards the future, that's when their societies became better. Do you think that in Japan right now, in Tokyo, there's some samurais walking around with swords and kimonos on? No. So why are you wearing dashikis? If you're young, ask somebody this question. Why are you wearing dashikis, beating on drums, talking about the ancestors? What did the ancestors do? What did they really do for you? What does knowing about Harriet Tubman do for you? What does knowing about Mansa Musa do for you? Embrace the future. Embrace science, mathematics, engineering, technology. It will set you free. Guys, do you honestly think, hear me out for a minute. Now, guys, please hit that like button, guys. And please, I know this is going to be, but guys, remember now, this isn't for you old people. This is for the young generation. Do you honestly believe that when man really starts to travel into the stars, do you honestly believe that you are going to be on some ship talking about the ancestors? You are going to be on some ship talking about some voodoo or vodou. The future is about science, and it's about discovery and exploration. The characters in the thumbnail, though every single character on that thumbnail is from the franchise Star Trek. And in Star Trek, they show you black people who are scientists, explorers, mathematicians, individuals who have power on a galactic scale, a part of something that is greater than them. They're not talking about woe is me, ancient Africa. They're not talking about the ancestors. They're not talking about being slaves. That thing, or those talking points keep you behind. When I was a teacher, hear me out. When I was a teacher, I used to only emphasize talking about the future. If there was a problem in the class, I would say get over it, look towards the future. Look beyond what previously happened. A lot of black people, not just African Americans, but Caribbeans, Brazilians, continental Africans are stuck in the past. And what has that done for you? Nothing. Could you imagine if Steve Jobs was stuck in the past? Could you imagine? Could you imagine if the Ford family was stuck in the past? You would still be driving around a Model T Ford. Yeah. Yeah, my granddaddy, he built the Model T Ford, and we ain't never gonna develop a better car. You see, embracing Afrofuturism, embracing the idea and the notion that maybe in the future, black people will be superior mathematically, be superior scientifically. Maybe that will free your mind now, thinking about the future. Instead of always downplaying the black nerds, and making fun of the black nerds, maybe you should start pedestalizing the black nerds. You want to know why? Do you know how many inventions came about through Star Trek? Now, when I was a kid growing up, I used to love watching Star Trek in the 90s, the late 80s, early 90s. A lot of the concepts, a lot of the technologies on Star Trek. Do you know that those technologies in Star Trek are realities now? You see, these people are thinking about the future. They're not thinking about the past. Could you imagine if white people walked around thinking about their ancient Viking ancestors getting conquered? Could you imagine how ridiculous that would be? They think about the future. The future is about building. The future is about establishing order and doing things on a greater scale than previous generations. Our ancestors were primitive. Our ancestors literally walked on gold, literally walked on diamonds, literally had mountains. There's mountains in Africa that have 65 to 70% iron ore. Do you know what that builds? Do you know what you get from iron ore? You get steel. Could you imagine if our ancient ancestors thought about the future and smelted steel at a full scale? We would have had skyscrapers 700 or 1,000 years before the white man did. Could you imagine if we would have used diamond for technology? We would have had the computer age before the white man did. You gotta put the Afrofuturist on the pedestal. This is not for you Generation Xers. This is not for you millennials. So if you don't like what I'm saying, tune out. Don't even view this video. This is for the 15-year-old kids, the 16-year-old kids who are being lied to every day, who are being told that they are slaves, who are being told to that they are oppressed. You're not oppressed. You're not a slave.